So hello and welcome, and thank you for listening to and watching my talk. Kind of as a starting point then really, is this quote from Hirsch, which is that knowledge begets knowledge. And when I talk to my staffing body, I use this quote quite a lot, especially when we're talking about the curriculum and we're talking about lesson delivery. And kind of when at my academic best, I'll refer to Hirsch. And when I'm kind of at my academic worst, I will simply say that pupils simply need to know stuff. And I think that's absolutely true. Pupils simply do need to know your subject content, subject material, the knowledge that underpins your subject, and the powerful knowledge almost inside out if they're going to be successful academically, and if we're going to work on trying to combat social justice for our pupils and to reduce the gaps between kind of the disadvantaged and the non-disadvantaged within the education sector. Kind of a starting point then really is a key question I'd ask any teacher really on any training session, especially if I was delivering training around behaviour, but equally if I was interviewing somebody who's about to join the profession potentially as a question set as well. And very simply, it's why did you become a teacher? And it's always useful for us to kind of refer back and think about why we became teachers. What was the underlying kind of purpose, reason behind it? And invariably, the answers tend to be broadly around the same kind of things. It tends to be a case that you really love your subject and you want to share your passion and enthusiasm and knowledge for your subject with pupils, that you want to educate pupils in a broader sense, that you want to do something that's good, to give something back. But ultimately, when we kind of go back to the starting point about why we entered this profession, we have what I would call the Halcyon Dream, really, which is this whole idea of spreading the love and the passion and the fervour and enthusiasm for our subject specialism or specialisms. And within kind of that Halcyon Dream is the core, the disciplinary knowledge, the hinterland, the framework, the frames with which we put that knowledge onto. Our own subject disciplinary knowledge, the kind of, I guess, for one of a kind of crude phase, really, the geeky element of being able to read and read and read and read around our subject domain. I'd also put into that this whole idea of teaching to the top. Something that's plagued our profession is differentiation by task and the amount of time that's taken. And actually, it's ended up kind of dumbing things down really for our pupils. And also to see the curriculum in its truest sense as a progression model. So to my mind, these are the core components or elements that make up the Halcyon Dream. And my talk today is based around this whole idea of the curriculum being God. I appreciate that Ofsted have now put into the framework the curriculum, the quality of education being basically the epicenter of everything. And I don't disagree with that, but this isn't about doing things for Ofsted. This isn't because Ofsted want this. This is something that sits right at the core of my very essence and very being. I think if you've got your curriculum right, coupled with a culture, your school can absolutely kind of let rip. So the whole talk is based around how do we make the curriculum be God? And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Sam Stickland. You can see me on Twitter and follow me at Strickomaster. And also, shameless plug, I'm the author of Education Exposed. So what gets in the way then of this Halcyon Dream? Well, workload is one major aspect that gets in the way. Pupil behaviour. The convenient line that's often used in schools is that poor planning leads to poor behaviour. That might be true in some cases, but I would actually argue that poor behaviour causes poor behaviour, which causes poor behaviour and causes more poor behaviour, and that actually needs to be dealt with. Endless priorities, where you've got school improvement plans that are thousands of pages long with thousands of priorities, thousands of drivers, whereby schools bring in something new every 2 minutes because it's the next gimmick fad silver bullet, supposedly, that's going to make all the difference. And constantly saying, we're doing this because Ofsted want, which is actually a really weak narrative for why you would ever do anything. Limited direction, limited understanding from above, which is then transcended all the way down through the school, being really limited. And that classic line as well, that we've always taught knowledge. It's a really lazy, and I hate to say it, almost narrow-minded stance and view of knowledge. We haven't always taught knowledge. We've predominantly, over the last sort of 10, 15 years, taught a very pedagogically driven curriculum, which has been activity driven, and it kind of misses the point in many regards. And then bad communication, poor communication is again another factor for destroying our Halcyon Dream, which again can lead often to an overloading of priorities, things that staff need to be working on, need to be doing. And I kind of think of the normal classroom teacher that's teaching a full timetable. In terms of an analogy, is like a bottle of water. So when you buy a bottle of water and you turn you open the cap, the water is almost full to the top, and there's a very, very tiny amount, a portion of space left. And how much do you pour in? If you're pouring in thousands of different things at 100 miles an hour, well, lo and behold, that water bottle just overflows and goes everywhere and seeps out of control. And that is very much what can happen to our staff, to our teachers. So we need to think, do we either relieve a little bit of pressure within that bottle and get rid of some of that water so there is space that allows for more things to be thrown in? Or do we only put in a minimal number of things into that water bottle so it doesn't overflow? And then the other Halcyon kind of dream destroyer is where we just leave staff to it completely. There is no direction from above. There is no support. Behaviour is left unchallenged, and it kind of becomes this kind of war of natural selection amongst teachers, and only the fittest will survive. So it's a bit of a daft analogy in many regards, but there's a scene in Batman where Bane talks about giving Gotham back to the people, and kind of taking that really loose kind of analogy. How do we give things back to the teachers so that they can actually teach? What is it we're actually doing that allows them to do their main job, and that the core job is the core job? Because actually, if we kind of think about schools, we think about children, we think about education, where does it all happen? Where is all the magic? It's in the classroom. And what happens in the classroom is the most important thing, irrespective of data tracking sheets, emails, spreadsheets, fanciful bits of paper. That's where what matters actually happens. So how do we allow teacher X to go into lessons completely refreshed as much as you possibly can in this profession, and almost turbocharged, and able to deliver a subject knowledge rich curriculum to their pupils? So something that we did in my school was to create a massive workload charter, and this is a commitment and a pledge from the senior team, including myself, to our staff, to get rid of some of the white noise and the kind of gumph that gets in the way of actually being able to deliver your curriculum effectively and efficiently and in a knowledge-rich manner. So we've divided it into 4 sections. We've looked at time, we've looked at professional development, we've looked at school foci, and then we've looked at the culture and ethos of the school as well. And I'm not going to read through the whole workload charter to you kind of verbatim, but I'll go over some of the kind of key things that we've done to help reduce workload, with a view of ensuring that the curriculum and the curriculum delivery ultimately is God. And kind of a starting point with this is to think, really, teaching is damn hard work. And again, back to that notion of the full-time classroom teacher delivering, in a secondary sense, 22 out of 25 periods a week. That's a tough gig. And we wouldn't expect an entertainer, a comedian, to teach, or sorry, to deliver, not teach, to deliver, you know, a 5-hour set every single day, to then go home every evening and be writing new material for a brand new set tomorrow. So it's not like they can just do the same thing on repeat. It just wouldn't happen. It's unsustainable. Yet we expect that of teachers. So some of the things that we've done as approaches to try and support our staff to get rid of workload that they don't need to have. We start with the time section first. Well, the first one for me is emails. And I've spoken quite a bit on Twitter, and indeed in Education Exposed, about emails and my view on them. You know, they're great. You know, they can be really timely, and they can be really efficient in many regards, for very quick, short, sharp, and precise communication. But the minute they go more than 3 or 4 lines long in terms of length, an email then becomes a meeting. And you'll need a meeting to actually go through the full content of an email. And the danger with email is that a lot of messages can be really muddled, can be mixed, and can be interpreted the wrong way. If I think through my career, though, you know, when I was a head of history, I used to get emails on a Saturday evening at 10 o'clock, you know, without question, to fill in a spreadsheet for Monday morning. And you could argue, you know, well, you could ignore that email and do it on Monday. And the reality is you couldn't. I think back to when I was a deputy head teacher. I used to get 250 emails a day. When I was an associate principal, I used to get 350 a day, 300 at weekends, a couple of hundred every day in the holidays, without fail. And emails become just this information communication overload. So in terms of my setting, we've banned them. There's an embargo from 6 p.m. on a Friday to Monday morning, and over holidays. I, again, appreciate through some of the Twitterverse debates I've gotten into, this is seen as controversial in some quarters, but I actually think it's really important. And it's necessary to give people a break from kind of hearing an email inbox pinging, or knowing, you know, consciously, subconsciously, that your email inbox is just chunking all the way up all the time, even though you've said I'm having the weekend off. You just know that come Monday there'll be 300 or 400 of these damn things waiting for you to get you before you even start your normal day job. Now, to get emails to work, you know, in terms of having embargoes, the whole culture of a school has to be geared around it. And that starts with, you know, the top person, the principal, and then the senior team, but also having a meeting schedule that allows for far more face-to-face contact. And I appreciate in this current climate with COVID, that's really, really difficult. And we've probably had to go more to emails as a main MO of communication, coupled with Zoom meetings and team meetings and all the rest of it. But once life does, hopefully it will, resume back to whatever normality is, I think it's something that if schools aren't doing, they should certainly consider. A second aspect is to centralise detentions. We completely centralise our whole sanction system as a school. So what we have across our school are 5 really clear, discernible rules. One is around mobiles, and the sanction or consequence for that is that if you've got your mobile out and about, it's confiscated for a week, including a weekend. And yes, that sounds really fierce, but the reality is you won't see mobiles across my school site. The second rule that we have is that you don't come to school late. You know, even if you're a second late, you're going to be in a same-day centralised detention after school. And then we have 3 really clear rules that make up our classroom code of conduct. The first one is based around the whole idea of the teacher being the expert. The second rule is based around not distracting others, because we have in our lessons what we call the natural state, where there's anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes of silent work in a lesson, and that's totally up to the teacher how long that's for. And the third rule is around arriving punctually and fully equipped with your homework completed to lessons. Now, if I break those rules once in a day, I will accrue a behaviour point. And that is about the behaviour itself. So teachers don't issue a sanction, they issue a behaviour point, which depersonalises the whole idea of you're in detention with me. If I get one of those points in a day, then my form tutor, who I meet twice a day at the start and the end of the day, will keep me behind after school and will have a correctional conversation with me. Not restorative, but correctional. And the idea is I should go and apologise to my teacher that I got whatever behaviour it is wrong. If I get 2 or more of those behaviour points, though, then I go into a same-day centralised detention after school, varying in length depending on how many of these behaviour points I've accrued. And the idea here is that's either with pastoral or senior staff. And again, in terms of our teaching staff, in the full broadest of senses, this is something less for them to have to do. It's something less for them to have to chase. There's a complete level of consistency to what we're doing because it's the same day. It's highly effective. No one escapes through the net. As a senior team and a series of pastoral staff, we can pick up very quickly where there are trends, where there are issues, where a pupil is continually misbehaving. But ultimately, in terms of workload, this takes away a huge chunk of time, of lost time from subject teachers and middle leaders. If I then take into account kind of the second strand, which is our CPD, and just to go over just one aspect from this, we give all of our staff 4 ring-fenced professional development training days. And this is on top of the 5 statutory training days that any school would have. It's all linked to performance management, and our performance management model is based around coaching. And the idea behind it is I want to work on higher order questioning or cold calling, for sake of argument, as 2 examples. Or it might be I want to work on my ability to get pupils to shape their answers. My entire performance management and my entire professional development throughout the year is going to be geared around that. So it's owned by the member of staff. It's not owned by the school. And for any one colleague to the next, that personalised CPD isn't the same. And whilst there is kind of a distinct package of professional development that we run as a school, which covers kind of the 5 statutory training days that we have, the rest of it is really specific, those 4 ring-fence days to the individual. And that's really, really important, really powerful as well. Again, that's a big commitment pledge that we're going to give you 4 days. And it might be that you want to go and visit a school to see a particular approach in action, operation. I mean, my hope is you'll come back and you won't leave my school. But actually, I think that's really important to be able to see things for real, in real time. Then in terms of school foci, I'm really clear with our improvement plan. To give you kind of a broad example here. So we will reference the school improvement plan for September on our January training day, where I give my kind of state of the nation address. And then around the start of the summer term, so just after Easter, I will go through kind of chapter and verse the school improvement plan that's coming into place for September. So in terms of staff thinking, it gives them 9 months to get their head around what we're trying to do, trying to achieve, where we're going to go. And then it gives them the whole of the summer term to think about the nitty-gritty specifics. To be fair, though, to my staffing body, we've outlined what the kind of school improvement drivers are for the next 4 years. My view is that this should go out really early, and it should be really clear, and it shouldn't be dictated to by reviewing and reflecting on exam result data in the summer. Because however much we want to reflect on how we did, kind of in a football sense, last season, it's last season, it's last year, it's old, it's done, it's been, it's gone. The next cohort that you've got in front of you is different, probably. They may, by default, it's got different personalities and different pupils in it, even if the data on entry, so to speak, is the same. But kind of analysing the data to the nth degree to use that to inform your school improvement plan priorities is I would actually argue, a really poor use of time and will lead to very rushed, sharp, snappy decisions that doesn't really give staff members any time to think about anything. Within that, what we then do not do as a school is for me to stand up on a Friday after school, get all the staff together and say, as of Monday morning, we are going to be doing this. I've worked in environments where that has happened, and for the leader in charge, I can understand maybe why they've done that. They've given that a lot of thinking time, whatever that change is. But the reality is the staff haven't had that thinking time, and the staff won't have the time to practice, to rehearse, to be trained in whatever that change might be. And they certainly won't have the time to come and speak to you about it, to iron out exactly what it is that you want. And I think, again, for me, by giving people time, it allows them to come and question, and if necessary, challenge a decision or a view or an approach, so that they really fully understand it. And if you're going to make things easy for the curriculum to be God, then I think the level of your communication needs to be crystal clear, but also needs to be really, really succinct. And then if I take into account kind of the non-negotiables and our school ethos, to give you two examples, we completely banned learning objectives across the school. And I know that there'll be advocates of learning objectives who will fundamentally disagree with me on this front. But I think to lessons that I've watched, lessons that I've observed over the years, whereby you've got must, should, could, circle, triangle, squares, waltz and wilts, and every other connotation of learning objective you can imagine. When you go and talk to pupils, my experience from what I've seen, and actually what I've done myself as a teacher in the past, is that those pupils have copied those objectives down. Potentially they've color-coded them, red, amber, green, with 3 different highlighter pens. And somehow that is deemed to be learning. And it's a false proxy for any kind of learning that might take place in a classroom. And then the observer will go and ask the pupils, what are you doing today? What are you learning about today? And you get, the pupil that's kind of absorbed the learning objective that says, well, today we're doing metacognitive reasoning skills. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with metacognition, but that statement, when you probe into it, what does that mean? Often ends up meaning absolutely nothing. So as a school, we've used big questions, and that's the MO of our delivery, really. All of our lessons hinge around a big question, which provides the hinterland, a framework for all the core disciplinary knowledge that you're trying to teach your pupils, to hang against, whether it be in that lesson or in a sequence of lessons. And that gives far greater meaning to pupils. So, for example, today in my history class, history is my own specialism, my own bias. Our big question is, to what extent was the Wall Street crash important in Hitler's rise to power? Well, that's really specific, that's really focused, and that gives all of the content around the Wall Street crash that we're looking at today a real sense of meaning and a real sense of purpose. And pupils can then really understand even more why they're learning that core disciplinary knowledge that we're trying to push their way. The other aspect in terms of culture is to move towards co-planning. That as a department, as a faculty, as a team, we are going to co-plan a year group with the work for any one term, half term. Again, to put this in really simple terms, tonight my department of 15, it's a huge department for sake of argument, are all going to go home. We're all teaching year 7 tomorrow morning, and we're all in our own way, shape or form going to plan a year 7 lesson tonight. And it's going to take any one member of staff 90 minutes for sake of argument. So I've got 15 lots of 90 minutes worth of work going on tonight to plan a completely inconsistent, but probably broadly quite similar year 7 lesson tomorrow. One inefficient and ineffective use of time. When my team of 15, we could have done that together. We could have done that in small groups and trained one another in the delivery of the year 7 curriculum. We could have carved the curriculum in its fullest sense out to different teams of people and co-planned it together as a group and trained each other together as a group. And then potentially tonight, I might not be going home and spending 90 minutes planning one lesson for tomorrow. I might actually be going home tonight and not having to do any of that and do all the other things that my life demands. So there's just a few approaches, a few ideas there of things that we can do to support workload. And I think having a commitment pledge like this, certainly from a leadership perspective, it is really, really important. And then kind of distilling it down to what happens in lessons. I mean, my view is, again, to keep things simple, to have a clear routine that is habitual in approach, and that everybody knows where they stand. So the approach that we've taken, again, as a school, is very much kind of a hybrid of Teach Like a Champion meets Rosenshine, with a few tweaks within that of what I want for my school. But I expect staff to give you a flavour of what we do, to meet and greet pupils at the door, to have a retrieval practice kind of do now or engage task, to hinge their lessons around a big question, to explain the context of their lesson, which might take anywhere up to maybe 2 minutes maximum, and then to engage pupils in lots of retrieval work, which should be anywhere between 60 to 80% of the lesson itself, with anywhere between 20 to 40%, and I appreciate research would say 80-20, presentation of new material. How the teacher then goes about doing that is totally up to them, because every teacher is an expert in their own field, their own domain, I would argue, and I would champion. But equally, I would also argue and champion that every subject is different as well. And we've also put visualizers across our entire school as part of our wider approach, which also encompasses the use of workbooks and knowledge organisers, which again, from a departmental perspective, have been co-planned. So I hope that's given you a bit of a feel for what we've tried to do as a school to reduce workload, and hopefully that gives you some ideas of what you can do regarding workload as well. Thank you for listening, much appreciated.